Hey, hello, what's going on, you guys? Today we got a brand new episode of Buy or Bust, and we're going to be going over Galacta, which is the brand new season pass card. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. And then here is Galacta on screen, a 4/6 with the ability each turn, the first card you play to another location, meaning not Galacta's location, reveals with +3 power. Which is going to be really interesting. We don't necessarily know at this second if it works with the Shuri interaction. I would say it's kind of like Elsa, so like Shuri goes off and then the Elsa happens, so it should probably be just like that, which that's a kind of the synergy we're talking about. We're not going to be showing that synergy on screen, but we're going to be talking about a deck that is going to be running some Shuri Kitty stuff, because I think that's a good home for this card when it comes to the Season Pass card. But yeah, let's talk about the key synergies we got real quick. So we have, of course, Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde playing on the lane by herself. Of course, this is the first card played on another location that gets the +3, which is what you need to keep in mind when it comes with Galacta. Has to be on a different location, and it's only the first card. Not any card, just the first card. So I think Kitty Pryde is a really good starting point there to kind of ramp out the Kitty power, especially if you're going to some Shuri Kitty things. And then, of course, Nimrod. I think Nimrod's another solid shout, especially even if you're doing Shuri stuff with Nimrod. You would have to ramp out your Galacta to get that, but maybe you're doing this for some Galactus things, if that is what you want to do with Galacta, which could work. Totally could work. I don't know. I think Galactus is a little bit cope, and you're really trying to push a really combo heavy deck. Granted, we have some combo heavy decks we're going to be talking about here, but Nimrod's a good shout. And then also Iron Man. I mean, Iron Man on a lane by himself, it's like getting hit with Agent Venom, or getting hit with Bast. Let's say it gets hit with that immediately already, and then you play Galacta, then this Iron Man gets a 6 power buff, so it's going to be a +12, that pretty much because Iron Man doubles there, so that's also a really good starting point. I think that's really focal, but of course, like all cards, there's got to be some cards that counter it. So some of the key counters that I was thinking of is Juggernaut, okay? So you're going to be like, Juggernaut, Tucker, why are you talking about Juggernaut? But if you don't have priority, Juggernaut could push your card back into the Galacta lane, which does not allow you to get the Galacta, buff off. This was just one of those maybe more niche counters I was thinking of, but it does count. I feel like the other stuff is going to be Clog, making it so you just can't add cards to certain lanes to kind of alter the Galacta there. Of course, Shadow King, this power is power that can be just reduced or just taken away, because of course Shadow King also goes through Luke Cage. So something to keep in mind there. Shadow King would reset it back to its base power, so it totally counters it. And if you have the Galacta in a lane by herself, Red Guardian also can counter the Galacta, negating her ability and making it so you can't actually get the stuff off you're wanting to get off. So just something to keep in mind there. Those are like the main ones. It's like this card has counters for sure. Like these are what I was thinking of, or it's more counters for the cards opposed to Galacta. Is probably more often what you're going to be seeing opposed to her getting countered herself. So you're probably going to see more of the Shadow King, more of like a Shang-Chi opposed to a Red Guardian. And now we got the good. So with this card, of course, your opponent has to kind of guess a 50-50. So it's other lanes, so it's not on the Galacta lane. So it's something they have to kind of be like, okay, are they going to be playing card here or here if I'm going to try and Shadow King or try and Shang-Chi, kind of depending on what you're playing. So they kind of have to predict where that is. 4/6 is just good stats, plus you get that extra 3 power, so it's essentially a 4/9, potentially even a 4/12, with the downside being you have to play cards on different locations than where this card is played. So I think that's really solid. It's a targeted ability, it's a targeted card, so like the first card you played is what gets targeted, so that's why it's a targeted ability. So you can kind of position the cards the way you want to. And it does combo with a lot of cards. There's a bunch of different cards you can actually play with this, which is pretty solid. But the bad, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, okay? So even though you do have a 50-50, it can also be predictable. If your lanes are getting filled, and there's only a couple of different options for you to be able to play your cards, your opponent can kind of guess where your next card is going to be played. And of course, if the power is staying on the board, that lane literally can just be Shadow King there from the Galacta. So keeping that in mind, it's a potential bad draw at the end of the game. If you can't play anything else with the Galacta, you don't get the +3, so it's just a 4/6. If you do have a 1-drop at the end of the game, you could play Galacta and the 1-drop, so that 1-drop does get that +3, because Galacta will have revealed first, and her ability does go off, so that's not as bad as it could be. And then, of course, you have the likelihood of your cards getting hit by counters, like I was saying, too. Your card's getting hit by Shadow King. your cards potentially going to hit with Shang-Chi. Your cards are just going to have that increased power, and people are going to be like, really cognitive, or you would think really cognitive of those cards being on the board. So something you got to keep in mind there. And then here is what we got: the floor and the ceiling for this card. So the ceiling, like the top end of this, is it gets ramped out by Zabu or Psylocke, and you can get 3 cards to get +3. That is like the top end here. Which at that point, this goes from a 4-6 to essentially a 4-15, which is really solid right there. So something to keep in mind. And then, of course, after that, we have the floor is you draw this at the end of the game, and it can't buff another card. It's just a 4-6 by itself. But on average, I would say, you play this on curve, let's say on turn 4, which would be curve, or turn 5. If you play it on turn 4, 2 cards are going to get +3 power. So essentially, this card is going to be a 4-12 at that point. Or if you play it on on turn 5, you can actually play this with a 1-drop with, Galacta, and you still are also a 4-12. So that's also incredible. That also could be potentially just, a ceiling for this card, like top end. Or if you just play this on turn 5 and you can't play anything else, the next card you play on turn 6 gets +3. So, like, the +3 is really going to start adding up. I don't think it's going to be, like, as crazy as Surtur, but who knows? It could be, depending on, like, what decks people are playing. But this is very interesting. I think you're more often than not going to get, like, an average turn 4, turn 5, and maybe be able to play 2 cards to be able to get the +3, which, I mean, that really does add up, and, like, essentially that is good value as well. And then here's one of my lists that we were thinking of. This is one of 3 lists. We have Shuri Kitty. So the main premise is that you're trying to get your Shuri Kitty value. So you're trying to get your Kitty as big as possible so you can Taskmaster it. You have Ravonna in this list, so you can play Taskmaster and Kitty on final turn. Or you also have Hope to be able to ramp out that Taskmaster and Kitty at the end of the game as well. You could also, if you want to do Red Hulk into Shuri, you have that to be able to do Taskmaster things as well. You could put armor in this list to be able to protect your Red Hulk and your Taskmaster stuff, but I'm seeing a lot more Shadow King than I am Shang-Chi, I would say, right now. So just thinking about that perspectively, your end goal is just buffing Kitty. You also have Thena to be able to get some extra power that way. You have Elsa if you want to fill your lanes to be able to get power there. And then, of course, Galacta gives your card +3 as it reveals. So if you play this into a Shuri on turn 4, or on turn 5, you play your Kitty into Shuri, your Kitty gets a +3, goes back into your hand, and then when you play Kitty again, it gets the Shuri value and then Taskmaster potential stuff. So there's a couple different options I like with this list. The next list we have is kind of just your token kind of Agent Venom list, but in this instance, we're incorporating Gore and Galacta to get some extra value potentially as well, getting that additional +3. You have 3 different cards that can get +3. You have Bass giving +2 to the cards in your hand. Agent Venom sending the base power to the cards to the 3. Galacta sending the next card you play on in a different lane +3. So you have a bunch of different ways to do that, and you're using Hope Summers as your ramp to potentially even do some maybe Gore Mystique things. You don't have a crazy amount of on reveal cards in this deck here, but your opponents are going to be playing on reveal cards too, so you can really get some extra value there. And if you do get the +3 onto Gore, that's already +4 power onto Gore, potentially even +3 power onto Mystique. So you can really kind of go over to the top in some of these other cards. And then this next list over here is probably my spiciest list. It is going to be some good old Phoenix Force, but with Galacta, using the Nimrod value as well as some Phoenix Force just shenanigans over here. You can enable, your destroy stuff with Nimrod. It gets to 9 power, and then you can do Venom and Deathlock. If you do it on the Deathlock, let's say, Deathlock reveals first. Your Deathlock is going to get +3 as well, and then, of course, your Venom eats all the other cards, so Venom gets that extra power. You can also have your Human Torch gets +3 power, and then it gets hit with a Ghost Spider. It becomes essentially a 110, which is really good, or with Aranya, there's so many different ways you can kind of mess around with this list to get some Phoenix Force value. I love Phoenix Force. I don't know if you guys love Phoenix Force, but it's one of my favorite decks, and I think there's a bunch of different ways you can kind of play around this with Galacta to use that power. So those are going to be the 3 decks. All those, of course, will be down in the description below. And then these are my ratings, okay? So, this is what the community is thinking. The general buzz, what I'm seeing from other people, too, is this card is kind of okay. It's a 4-6. It gets +3. Flexibility, I mean, it can be flexible, but I'm thinking more often than not, you're building lists around it, opposed to something you can kind of just plug into everything. I don't necessarily know if it'll be adjusted. Granted, Surtur was +3 for all the 10 powered cards that got played, and Surtur got adjusted immediately. But I think Galacta's not going to be the same as Surtur. I think she has potential to, but like Surtur can get the proc multiple times on one turn, whereas Galacta's +3 only goes off once per turn. So keeping that in mind, it really just is going to depend on what cards are going to combo with her going forward in the future, opposed to right now, kind of like what I'm thinking. And that's what like the community's vote is, and honestly, that's what I'm thinking too. I really don't think this card is going to get like adjusted just yet, or if she does, not as quickly as Surtur got adjusted. But I do think like this is a pretty solid card, and I think the season pass is always a good card to go for. So yeah, I would totally say go for Galacta. It is a season pass card. The season pass overall is definitely going to give you a lot of value. It is a Series 5 card you can get for $10 if you are willing to spend. Not saying you have to spend, but I think she is going to be a card that has some utility. Not going to be as crazy as some of our other season pass cards, but I think the overall value of just getting the season pass makes it totally worth it. And then final notes, of course, you are spending money right now, so keep this in mind. You could totally wait a couple days, see if you're actually still playing a lot of Snap, because Marvel Rivals does also come out next week, which is why they have this collab going on. And if you need other cards instead, or if you just don't want to spend the money, like totally feel free not to. Try and avoid the FOMO as much as possible. I can be wrong. The community can be wrong. There's a lot of instances where, you know, we are just entirely wrong, and cards just sprout out in the meta and go crazy. And I think that's kind of what happened with Surtur. It's happened with Anti-Venom. It's happened with Ajax. You know, it's happened with Legion. It happened with Cannonball. Like, there's a bunch of cards that we've been wrong about, but they end up having value. So just keep that in mind, that these are our own opinions, and we could totally be wrong. We are human after all. And sometimes, yeah, sometimes cards just don't work out like we think we are. And, like, you know, we're really high on a card, but it's really like we should be lower on a card. So keep that in mind as well. And yeah, prioritize what you like to play, what fits your play style, what you enjoy playing. And then, yeah, bad cards get buffed and good cards get nerfed. Sometimes good cards get buffed as well. Shout out to Shadow King from a couple OTAs ago. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys did stick around to the very end, let me know down below. Are you guys going to be getting the season pass? I know there's a boycott going on about not getting the season pass. Totally feel free to share your thoughts. Let me know. And definitely like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Until the next time, you guys have a good one, and Tucker out.